Hello and welcome to Adult Education at Covenant Presbyterian Church. This is the Adult Education presentation for May 23rd, 2021. It is a joy to be able to be together in this way to enjoy and learning together. So let us pray. Holy and gracious God, we give thanks for this day, for the sun that shines and for the joy that you bring to our hearts. We give thanks for the opportunity to learn together, to learn about your creation and how we may better care for it, and to learn about what is happening in our community. Amen. To introduce our speaker, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Whalen. Steve, here you go.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome. Helen, thank you so much for joining us this morning to speak about Madison BCycle. Helen, introduce you this to Jeff, Pastor Jeff and Pastor Charlie, the two pastors at our church, two of the pastors, and the rest of the folks are either members or friends of mine that are joining us. So good to have you. Helen Bradley is with Madison BCycle, which is part of Trek BCycle. She joined the BCycle team in 2020 as the GM. And she works to find creative partnerships with businesses, municipalities, community groups, and others that will help strengthen and grow the Madison BCycle network. With a strong focus on increasing access to bike share, Helen is eager to dig in and show the positive impact that bike share can have on our community. Helen has over 12 years of marketing and sales experience and is currently a board member of Madison Bikes. Before joining the Trek team, Helen was a BCycle member for over 5 years. She knows firsthand the benefits of biking can have on one's physical and mental health, as well as the positive environmental impacts biking has by offsetting carbon emissions, and also the independence and confidence that riding a bike can provide. Helen and I met through the Downtown Madison Inc. DMI membership group, and we're on the transportation committee together, which is a great way to meet up with like-minded folks talking about multimodal transportation in the Madison and Dane County area. And bike share is definitely one of those options for multimodal. And now that BCycle is 100% e-bikes, it's even more so, I believe. So with that, I will pass it on to Helen. Thank you again, Helen, for being here today.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. I do have some slides to present today. Hopefully it'll just be easier to follow along with everything I'm saying. Can you see the slides okay?
Yes, they're coming through.
Okay, great. All right. So as the nice introduction from Steve, my name is Helen Bradley and I'm the general manager for Madison BCycle. Like he said, I've been in this role, it'll just be a year here in June. So I started as the general manager right in the heart of the pandemic. So that was an interesting time to start in a new role, and much less in a role that is involved with public transportation. It was a really great, quick, fast learning opportunity. How we really are relied on by many people in the Madison community for transportation options outside of just our public and recreation users. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we saw in 2020, because I think people are always interested to hear kind of what happened last year. And then I'll just really give you an introduction for those of you who aren't super familiar with our program, just kind of the basics of how it runs and operates. And then if there's any questions I can answer at the end, I'm happy to do so as well. So Trek came up with this goal to get more people on bikes about 11 years ago. And that's when Madison Bike Share was created. It was really just set out as a mission by John Burke, the president and CEO of Trek, to help create healthier communities in which we operate in. Like I've experienced, and I hope maybe some of you have, from riding your own bikes or maybe riding a BCycle, it truly can offer such a simple solution to a lot of very complicated problems. Everything from environmental impacts, health, physical and mental, and transportation challenges. So I specifically in my role at BCycle really looked to partner with campuses, corporations, municipalities, you name it, any creative partnership. I'm looking to get introduced to people how we can implement and maintain and grow our system. And not only, I'll share a little bit about Madison BCycle, but also BCycle headquarters as a full operation, kind of what that looks like. They do create a suite of products that really is intended to make biking the most enjoyable part of someone's day. And a little bit about BCycle. So we are one of 30 independently owned BCycle operations throughout the United States. We've just launched a few new ones in Santa Barbara, California, in Encinitas, California. We're now in Greenville, South Carolina. And we also just took over a bike share program that was kind of failing, if you will, in Nashville. So we're continuing to grow. So just to give you an idea, we're not just here in Madison, but Madison is where we started and what we consider kind of our home base for testing new products and just kind of troubleshooting things and coming up with creative solutions and partnerships. So that's kind of who we are as a bigger picture. For Madison BCycle, we have a lot of exciting things going on. And I just wanted to start with this one because like Steve mentioned in 2019, we switched our entire fleet of over 300 bikes to all electric bikes. So we are now fully electric. Our bikes are pedal assist. So if you've ridden with us, you know what that means, but it is not a throttle system like some e-bikes can be. So you really have to create the power through your own legs and through your own feet, pedaling the bike in order for that battery assist to kick in. So it's very safe. The maximum from your exertion of effort, the maximum mile per hour is 18 miles per hour. And that's on like a very flat paved surface that you would probably see. So we've seen our demographic group here in Madison ranges from ages of 18 all the way to 80. We've heard a lot of folks who are maybe in that 65 to 80-year-old group where they hadn't ridden a bike in years because they just didn't feel comfortable. Maybe they've had issues with joints, whatever it might be. My dad is one of these perfect candidates. He had a knee replacement surgery 3 years ago, and he just could not ride his own bike. But when he gets on a pedal assist or an e-bike, it makes it so much more enjoyable for him because he doesn't really have to exert a lot of energy. And that's what we're finding is drawing people. They get to try out electric bikes for a very low cost here in Madison, and it ends up getting most people hooked. So as you can see, we had a huge bike boom last year, and that's continuing. People are buying their own e-bikes, and sales are through the roof, not only at Trek, but at all bike retailers across the United States. One of the positives of introducing e-bikes as well to the Madison system is that we're seeing that 37% of our riders are choosing to drive their car less because of Madison BCycle. A lot of people are using our bikes for commuting to and from work. They're using it for quick trips to the grocery store maybe. And then also if they're nearby a station or close to one, they're choosing to use that as kind of like their recreational option instead of using their own bike. So Madison BCycle and BCycle in general is different than maybe if you think of the scooters. That is not what Madison BCycle is. We are a dock-based program, meaning every bike that we own and operate needs to be in a dock when it's not being ridden. So people aren't leaving them on the sidewalk. We're managing it at a much more higher rate than a system that would be considered a dockless system. So these are our two types of docks that we have here in Madison. On the right is what we just call simply a 1.0 station. This comes with a kiosk where a user can walk up directly to the kiosk and purchase a pass. They can learn more about our system on the screen prompts. And these come with solar power panels. They also can run off a battery power, or we also have kind of a combination where they are solar during the day, they charge the battery at night. This is kind of our traditional station where you will see most of these around Madison, but we are actually switching now to what's on the left-hand side here is called just our 3.0 dock. It's a new technology that was introduced this year. And what's really great about these docks is that they are all run as their own independent unit. They run off of a battery, internal battery. So if for some reason, if something were to happen to the 1.0 station, it gets unplugged or there's an error, it takes the whole station down and it's offline. With these 3.0 docks, however, like I said, they run as their own independent network. So if one isn't working, the others will still function for our users. The nice thing about these two is because they are singular, it offers a lot more flexibility for spatial planning. They're a lot more eco-friendly. They don't rely on electric source of power. We can run them off of pretty efficient batteries that run about 6 months at a time, and just have a smaller footprint in general. So these can be a little tricky when you're not used to the system because they don't come with a kiosk, but you can check out a bike using our mobile app and or a member fob. And I'll show you a little more about our app in just a minute here too. So that's what you're going to see in Madison. And as we continue to grow, we're actually solely putting 3.0 docks on the ground. And I think eventually within maybe the next 5 to 10 years, depending, you might only see those 3.0 docks in our system. So this is just kind of a better shot of the 3.0 docks. This is kind of one standalone on the left there, and then they also come with a base plate. What's really cool this year is we introduced a new feature called a bike battery tracker. So each bike has its own battery, and our team every day works diligently to make sure that those batteries are charged. They don't actually charge in the docks, contrary to very popular belief. We are working on that, but as of now, we have a team that goes around and swaps batteries every day to make sure that those bikes are charged. And what's great now is if you pull up our app, you can actually see before you even get to a station where that battery level is. So you know exactly if you want to check out bike 5, it's got a green bar, that means it's fully charged. And that also helps with our operations as well. So our team isn't driving 2 different stations that actually have fully charged batteries. They can skip those, and it creates much more efficiencies with our processes as well. This is the app. Our team has worked very hard on getting this very up to date. You can do everything from check out a bike on the app. You can pay for a membership using the app. You can track your trips. There's GPS on there. So if you're new to the system and you want to check out a bike, but you're not sure where to go, you can start a trip on the app and it'll show you exactly which route to take by bike path and how long it's going to take you to get there. So it's a pretty great system and constantly being updated. But that's kind of, with the 3.0s, we worked really hard to make sure that this was the most user-friendly system here. So this is Madison. This is our operations map. We have about 49 stations currently on the ground. So this year, we just added the 2 stations you'll see in Monona. That was a new deal for us with the city of Monona. And the furthest north station we have is up at MATC. And then the furthest west we go is UW Digestive Health Center on University Avenue. So we're always looking. I'm going to have a jet flying over here. Sorry if it's loud. We're constantly looking to expand our operations, and I'll talk about that as well. But that is my main goal with my job here. So looking to expand our operations, as you can see, it's heavily densified in and around the downtown area, which is great because when we started off 10 years ago, that's where we wanted to test where people are riding. as we've grown now, people want to do longer trips. E-bikes allow for longer trips. Where can we expand outside of this traditional network that will fill in transportation gaps, be great for employers to offer as a transportation benefit for their employees getting to and from work. Things like church, maybe you choose to ride your bike instead of drive if it's convenient enough for you to have a station somewhere nearby. So just trying to think outside of the box a little bit about how we can continue to grow Madison BCycle. We also have 300 bikes in our fleet. We are growing that to 400 this year. So we have 2 full-time mechanics that are building those bikes today. And we will be getting those out in our fleet, hopefully by midsummer. You'll see those on the ground. And another cool thing, just in terms of seeing your impact, is if you sign up for a BCycle membership, you can create a profile and it will track all of the trips that you've personally taken, how many miles you've ridden, what that equates to in carbon offset, and how many calories you've burned, and then also money saved in terms of gas, considering maybe you would have driven instead of biked. And then it also tracks your stations that you typically ride to and from. So this really gives you a glimpse of just what type of impact you're having. And if you're someone who's maybe competitive, this is a great way for you to track something maybe against your spouse. If you've ridden more miles, you can kind of track that as you go through the program. And what I mentioned earlier is the 2020 impact. So because of COVID, obviously a lot of things were shut down last year and are still slowly kind of getting back. We actually saw, while our trips were down overall for the year of 2020, we saw a huge increase in what we're calling recreational trips. So on the top left of the page is our 2019 heat map. This shows you where people were riding most. And you'll see the red shows you exactly where people were riding. It was in and around the downtown. So that means it was most likely a lot of students and also commuters who were working or living on the outskirts of town and commuting and using our system to ride into downtown. What we saw in 2020 was a huge shift. The Lake Loop, the Monona Lake Loop has filled in substantially. We saw our Arboretum and Vila station was our top used station last year. When the Arboretum Street was closed to vehicle traffic, we saw a huge increase in folks walking and biking through the Arboretum. And then just doing a lot of trips that are really outside of our normal stretch here. And I think that just kind of goes back to people were more comfortable riding or walking on safe streets, bike paths where there weren't a lot of other people. Everyone was kind of looking for some space, but everyone also wanted to get outdoors and continue to get that physical activity. So we saw a huge increase in that. And I think this year we're continuing to kind of see now a blend of the two. People are back at work, back at school, still wanting to maintain their distance and get exercise. So I'll be very interested to see what our 2021 heat map will look like at the end of this year. And I'm probably going quicker than I thought here. I wanted to introduce our art bike program. Steve has been a huge contributor to this program. I'll tell you a little bit about the basics of it. So we came up with this idea this winter to come up with a community-based program that would help local artists, it would help local nonprofits, and just creating a platform for awareness for them. So we've kind of come up with this triangle formation, if you will. So we were looking for sponsors, corporate businesses, anyone who would be a financial supporter of a bike. So Steve Wayland, on behalf of DC Engineering, is sponsoring a bike, and he is working to help bring awareness to Sustain Dane. And the artist that they selected to create the artwork for their bike is TL Luke. And I don't know if TL was able to join or not, but she's pictured here on the left. So TL created some artwork, and there's a little bit of a snapshot. I didn't want to give too much away, but on the top right is a little peek of her artwork that she created. for holistic sustainability. Everything from environmental to personal, you name it, social justice. She created some really unique artwork. So you're going to see that artwork displayed on our bike. We have a launch event coming up on June 10th at Garver Feed Mill that is open to the public. I'd love for anyone on this call to join if you're interested. We will have 28 unique bikes. We'll be supporting over 20 local nonprofits, and 18 local artists have joined in this effort. So thank you, Steve, for being part of that. And we're looking forward to seeing the finished artwork at the event as well. So our vision for 2021 and beyond, I know we have a lot still to do. We're a small team. There's 6 of us that run and operate Madison BCycle. It's me, the GM. We have an operations manager. We have some techs and some mechanics. So with that, expansion is a little slower than probably most people would like to see, but we're always interested in hearing ideas about where we can be and where we can make the most impact. So these are just some of the initial plans for 2021. The north quarter of East Washington, Middleton, and the west side. We're looking at Park Street, as well as the north side near Warner Park. Like I mentioned earlier, we're really looking at implementing those 3.0 docks because of their flexibility. We can have smaller stations in more condensed areas for higher impact. Most riders say they will walk 5 minutes to get to another station before they kind of give up on our system. So that's really what we're trying to do, is fill in those areas so that people can get to another station if a station is full or empty. We really want to focus on low-income communities and areas with high use of public transportation. Right now, we feel like that is a huge gap that we really can help fill, especially with a new BRT system coming in 2023. Where can we start filling in some of these areas that either A, might be losing bus stops because of the BRT? Where can we help fill in the greatest need where people are relying heavily on public transportation as maybe a secondary option for them and their families to get around? And then always driving sustainability. We need to, and we are adapting to changing trends when and where people are riding. We saw a huge case study of that last year. So now, versus our condensed downtown network, we're really looking at major trailhead systems in Madison because people want to ride in the outdoors. So maybe we put some in McFarland, we just put some in Monona, maybe we look at Verona. So we're always looking to change up our system. And then just continuing to grow our partnerships, just like I'm doing here today, talking about Madison BCycle, spreading the word about it, getting interest, and answering any questions, because the more that I can explain how the system works and how great the impact can be on the community, the more people hopefully will get interested in maybe change some habits from driving to the grocery store, maybe to choosing to ride a bike one day instead. Simple as that. So that's actually all that I had today. If there's any questions, though, I would be happy to answer any that you might have.
Thanks, Helen. That was wonderful. Really appreciate all the information. Jeff, do you want to put us back? Maybe stop on sharing your screen. Yeah.
Yes. Now that I've unspotlighted Helen, you'll be in speaker view, so I encourage you to switch to gallery view. And so it looks like, Karen, you have a question. You can go ahead and share.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. That was a really awesome presentation. I'm really excited to hear really everything you said, especially about your location you're looking at placing in low income areas and some more challenged areas. And I was really curious about what challenges there are and how you identify specific locations. Like, do you need sponsorships from the businesses or buy-in from the businesses? Are these always on public right away? I get kind of into the nuts and bolts when I think about this, but I'm just curious, if you can just overview a few of those issues that, as I think about it myself, I think it's a great thing, like I say. Thanks.
Yeah, Thanks, Karen. Absolutely. So I'll start, the public right away stood out to me. So that actually, we are open to placing our stations anywhere. We work with the city of Madison. We have an operating agreement with them. So if and when needed, we do acquire a permit and approval from them to place our stations. So Reese Stevens Field, we work with them. Any parks in the area, we work with them. But then we also work with private entities as well. I'm working with a restaurant owner who wants to put 4 docks outside of his restaurant this year. And I'm working directly with him on that as well. So from the financial aspect, the way that our system started was the goodness of John Burke's heart giving us a grant from TREC to get this program launched. That was a great way to get us started and to get people familiar with Madison BCycle. But now that we're kind of in the 11th year of our program, we really do rely heavily on sponsorships. So any financial sponsorship we can get. Nonprofits, obviously it's a different story. We still look for some sort of maybe partnership or support there, but we're always very flexible when it comes to nonprofits versus for-profit businesses if you're interested in putting a station out front of your business. Does that help answer your question, Karen?
It does. And I guess are you open to hearing suggestions from people, or how do you go through that process of narrowing things down?
Yeah, I'm always open to hearing ideas. I do a lot of site visits. So I'm always open to, if you have suggestions, feel free. I can share my contact information with the group. You could reach out to me and send me an email, and I'd be happy to go through that with you. And the process really entails just, give me an idea of where you're looking. Is there any type of financial or business support, or maybe it's a grant that we could use to financially support the station? And then, what kind of station makes sense there? What size? Is it a 10 dock? Is it a 3 dock, depending on the need? So there's a lot of things that we would talk about in that initial discovery conversation that we could certainly talk through.
We have a question in the chat. Is BCycle a complement to or a competitor with our bus system?
That is a great question, John. We are a complement, 100% a complement to the bus system. We operate independently. We are not funded by any federal transportation dollars. We don't receive any funding from the city of Madison, but we like to think of ourselves as an arm of public transportation.
I have a question, Helen. So if somebody maybe isn't ready to get the app, but they want to try BCycle out, maybe they don't even use their phone that much with apps, how do they use BCycle?
Sure. You can walk up to any of our stations that have a kiosk, and that's about 40 out of 48 of our stations right now. You can walk up to a kiosk. There's a few prompts on there. You can choose, how does it work? It'll walk you through exactly the steps. You can buy a day pass or a 30-minute pass just to try it out. You would just swipe your card the same you would do if you're purchasing anything from a vending machine. You just put your card in. You kind of plug in some information so we know who you are. So who is taking our bike out? We do need to track that kind of stuff. And then you can just select a bike number and then take your bike out for unlimited 60-minute trips is how the system works.
And so it's 60 instead of 30 minutes?
Yep. So we have two. So we have the single pass. If you just want to try it out and you're just very curious about it, it's a 30-minute pass. It's $5 for that. So you check the bike out, you have 30 minutes to ride it, and then you check the bike back in. That's your $5 30-minute pass. If you wanted to try it for a longer amount of time, which I always recommend the day pass or the monthly pass, it's $15 for a day pass or $20 for a monthly pass. So it's kind of like, if you're going to try it more than once, it's really worth doing the monthly pass. That gives you the ability to check out a bike for 60 minutes at a time. And then what that means is we just ask that you, after you ride for 30 to 60 minutes, whatever it might be, you just check your bike back into a dock. It doesn't have to be the one that you checked it out from, but that way we can kind of keep track of where our bikes are in the system. And the whole point of bike share is to share the bikes with other people. So that just helps make the bikes more available to other people if and when it's needed.
Charlie, yeah, I see your question.
Helen, thank you for presenting for us today. Actually, I have two questions. One of them is in terms of newer locations. Do you find a location that seems to need it and have an express desire for it? Or do you do the, if we build it, they will come kind of, think, well, it might work here. Let's put in some locations and see what happens. And second, perhaps related question, I thought I heard you say something about bike trails. I mean, like, is there talk about putting BCycle things on, Glacial Drumlin Trail or Military Ridge Trail? Because I would imagine that people might find those attractive.
Yeah. The first part of your question is, since I started in this role, I've actually had so many people come to me about BCycle that I have rarely had to go kind of find the areas to fill in the system. So we get a lot of interest from people in the area about Madison BCycle, and not just in Madison. So I've been working with the city of Fitchburg, the city of Middleton, a lot of municipalities outside of just the true Madison area are very interested in creating their own kind of pocket of BCycle. So that's kind of the one scenario, but there is also the other scenario of, I mentioned the East Washington corridor and South Park Street. So there really is a high need for public transportation in those areas. So that's something that we as a company look at. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy behind me. That's an area that we really look at where we feel we can help out with the lack of or the gaps in public transportation. So it's kind of a mix of both with that. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Just wondering about trails, like.
Yes, thank you. That was something that kind of came out of last year. I think prior to me being here at BCycle, I'm sure it's come up in conversation and people have been interested in that. But what we saw last year was a huge increase in recreational trips. So meaning people were riding longer distances because of the e-bikes and just wanted to enjoy our trail systems here in Madison. So we started thinking about, is there a way that we could pilot kind of this major trailhead network of stations where we know that there's ample parking for people who have to drive to get to, because that's mostly how people get to these major trail systems, is they put their bike on their bike rack, they drive, they get off and bring their bike. So how can we kind of incorporate BCycle into that type of structure? Having a larger station, maybe at like Lake Farm Park in Madison would be a great example of something like that. We are piloting, as soon as we can get things going, we are going to pilot a station in McFarland as well, by the Lower Yahara River Trail system, as that's expanding through 2022. So just things like that. And we work with Dane County Parks on those types of projects. They're very supportive as they are converting most of their public buildings to solar. They're really looking to change the way that they think of doing their business as well.
Vic, I see you have your hand up. I'll come to you in just one second. I have a question about helmet usage. How do you encourage helmets? How do you balance the social good of BCycle with the public safety health benefits of helmets?
Yeah, we don't offer helmets. It's a little tricky. I wish we could do that, have some sort of vending machine that you could get a helmet out of, maybe someday. But in our user agreement, we do, we don't require helmets, but we do suggest people bring their own helmets, especially if they're going to be riding on our busy trails. If you've ever ridden, you know how busy they can get on a weekend. There's a lot of traffic and or the streets. So it's really up to the rider's discretion to bring their own personal helmets with them. But we certainly encourage it. And anytime we post on our social media and an email, we're always kind of reminding people that that is the safest way to utilize our system.
Great, thanks. Vic, yeah, you can go now.
Yeah, thank you. Helen, this question goes back to kind of the use of trails. Have you guys ever considered, a MB cycle, a mountain bike cycle, where, a bike could be rented, say in downtown, and, you could bike back out to, Blue Mound and, on Military Ridge Trail. I've done that several times, and I've, asked some people to go with me, but they don't have mountain bikes, or they're not, fully confident of, the demand of the, distance. I just thought that'd be kind of cool to have a business that, or BCycle that would, have that capacity to offer that recreational opportunity based on all the trail systems around Madison.
For sure. I love where you're going with that. And those are the kinds of ideas that I, are constantly going through my head too. Funny you mentioned the mountain bike thing, because we actually, because we are we work hand in hand with Trek and BCycle headquarter, their product team. We were actually just piloting some new tires on our BCycles. They were a much thicker tire, more of their traditional mountain bike tire. But because the way that our docks are set up, the tires were too fat to fit into our docks. And so, I've always thought it'd be so cool to do fat tire BCycles in the winter for those who, bike advocates that love riding in the winter. I think there is definitely an opportunity to kind of create a new arm of our business for more bike rental versus like our traditional docked bike share program. But I'd say nothing is impossible. We're looking at introducing a cargo bike. Our product team is working on a cargo bike that you'll see piloting in 2022 potentially. We're also working on in-dock charging. So there's always new things that are coming. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday we see something like that, Victor.
Thank you. I'll email you.
Sounds great. Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Steve, I saw your hand up, and then Beth, we can have you there too. We are running short on time, but we have time for a few more questions. So Steve, then Beth. Steve, was I wrong? Did I not?
Oh, I think Steve was doing a clap. Were you doing a clap?
No, I did raise my hand. Thank you.
Okay.
Just realized I was muted and my video was off. So, because I was typing. Okay, so real quick, I just wanted to reach out, Helen, on behalf of Covenant Church to be part of the conversation for BCycle stations along the Mineral Point corridor. So I'm thinking, from where Speedway turns into Mineral Point Road all the way out to Gammon Road, where Westtown Mall is located. And there's also, as you know, CUNA Mutual and the University Research Park. So our church is definitely interested in talking to Trek and BCycle and others, neighborhood communities that are connected with the church because members live in those neighborhoods, the Hill Farms neighborhood, and then Park Crest and some of the areas to the west. We want to be part of that conversation. You said West Side and Middleton is Point Road part of that?
Yeah. This is a very, very, very early discussion, but I was just out at the University Research Park last week doing a site visit with a few members from the Mandel Group and University Research Park. So they're very interested in adding stations within and around their business park, which was right on, near Mineral Point. So I think the more conversations we have like that we will be able to quickly fill in that corridor. Very interested in having that discussion with you, Steve. I think even if a station seems like it might be a little outside of our, network, if it works for you and there's a need for it, I'm always open to trying. And again, expansion is maybe a slightly slower than people would like, but if we can start filling in, I think that's a great start.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, Beth, you had a question?
I'm sorry I came late. Just what does happen when you return it late?
Yeah, so if you do any of the passes, if you're over, once you hit 30 minutes over, so basically once you're at 90 minutes, you receive a $3 usage fee charge. And then every 30 minutes after, you get charged $3. So it's kind of, depending what your opinion is, I think it's pretty minimal if you did want to keep the bikes out a little bit longer, as long as you're comfortable and just know that up front.
I think if there's one more question, we have time for it. Yes, Barb.
Hi, thank you again. This is really interesting. So if you can take the bike from point A to point B, does it happen much that you get to point B and there's no spot for you to pull your bike into? And then what do you do?
It does happen. We try our best to balance our system. So that's one of the roles of our techs. They go around and swap batteries, but then also rebalance our system. So I'd say if it does happen, we have a 24-hour customer service phone number that's on all of our bikes and our stations and the app. So you can always call them and just say, hey, I'm at this station. It's my final destination. There's nowhere to park my bike. Oftentimes they'll say, go ahead and leave it. And then they'll give one of us a call so that we can run out there and just grab the bike for you. It was nicer with our old bikes. We had locks on all of them, which I'm trying to get reintroduced to this system. So at least you could lock the bike up for us somewhere. But for the time being, sometimes leaving it is the only option.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Helen, for being here. Also, thank you for being flexible with the timing of this morning. I really appreciate your flexibility, and I'm really glad that this worked out because this is really wonderful.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I always love talking about Madison BCycle. So if anyone has any questions, again, feel free to email me. Steve's got my contact information, and feel free to share that out.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to close this with a prayer, and then I'll stop recording. Oh, holy and wonderful God, you have made this world good and set us to be stewards of it. We give thanks for those who work to make this world cleaner, safer, better, and more sustainable. Your promise is for us and for our children and for our children's children. And so we pray thanksgiving for those who work to make our children's children's life that much better. Amen. Thank you very much.